Have you ever been completely alone in a place that feels alive? Where every sound echoes back and the silence feels heavier than the air itself? I used to think I was just a night shift cleaner, until St. Mary's Hospital showed me how wrong I was. Because that place was never really empty. My name's Michael. I'm 30, single, and honestly, just trying to pay rent. Cleaning hospitals at night wasn't glamorous, but it was quiet, easy, and the pay was decent. St. Mary's Hospital was one of the oldest in the state. It used to be a church before it turned into a full medical facility. The new West Wing was modern. Bright lights, fresh paint, automatic everything. But my assignment was in the old East Wing, the part most staff didn't like going into. The hallways were narrow, the paint was peeling, and the air smelled like disinfectant mixed with damp paper. My supervisor, a guy named Ralph, gave me one rule on my first night. Stay out of room 214. Maintenance is working on it. I laughed. Sure, no problem. The first 2 nights were fine. I'd put on my earbuds, mop the floors, clean the glass doors, grab coffee from the vending machine. Easy stuff. The silence was actually kind of peaceful. But the third night changed everything. It was just after 2 a.m. I was mopping the corridor near the old X-ray room. That room was supposed to be locked, but the door was cracked open. And from inside, I heard a faint beeping sound. Slow, steady, electronic. I hesitated, thinking maybe a machine got left on. I pushed the door gently. The room was dark except for the soft glow of a monitor. Dust floated through the air like tiny ghosts. The X-ray machine, old, bulky, probably decades out of use, was powered on. The screen showed a chest X-ray. I frowned. Who the hell turned this thing on? I tried pressing the power switch. Nothing happened. Then suddenly, the image on the screen blinked. And for just a moment I saw movement inside the chest cavity on the X-ray. Something shifted, like a shadow was moving inside the body. I stepped back. My skin went cold. Then, as if it sensed me, the machine powered off by itself. I told myself it was just a glitch, an electrical fault. Old hospitals have plenty of those. But when I mentioned it to Ralph the next morning, he laughed.
Michael, that machine's been removed for 15 years. The power line's been disconnected.
I stared at him. No, I'm serious. I saw the screen on. The beeping. He cut me off.
You probably need sleep, man. These night shifts mess with your head.
Maybe he was right. But the next night, I decided to check the security footage. The maintenance room had a few working monitors that displayed the security feeds from the old wing. At 2:07 a.m., I focused on the camera inside the X-ray room. At first, nothing. Just stillness. Then, a shape. Someone, or something, was standing in front of the X-ray table. It looked like a woman in a hospital gown, long hair falling over her shoulders. She wasn't moving. Just standing there. I leaned closer to the screen. The image flickered, and in the blink of an eye, she turned, facing directly at the camera. Her face was pale, eyes dark, hollow. I gasped and ran straight to the X-ray room. The door was closed. I kicked it open, empty, no one there. But on the floor, faint wet footprints led from the center of the room to the hallway. I followed them with my flashlight. They disappeared halfway down the corridor. When I came back, the monitor in the maintenance room was static, and behind me, I heard breathing, slow, shallow, right over my shoulder. I turned. No one. The hallway was empty. I splashed cold water on my face in the bathroom, staring at my reflection. I looked like I hadn't slept in a week. The fifth night, I wasn't alone. A new guy had joined the cleaning crew. Tom, 22, friendly, talkative. I told him the basics, then said casually, "You can take the X-ray room tonight." He grinned. "Easy job, man." At 2:10 a.m., I was sweeping the lobby when I heard a loud thud. I ran back toward the East Wing. Tom was on the floor, pale, shaking, his eyes wide open in terror. "What happened?" I asked. He whispered, barely able to speak. She was behind me. I saw her in the glass reflection. She said my name. I looked around. The air was cold enough to make my breath visible. There was no one else there. I got Tom outside, but he wouldn't go back in. He quit the next morning. That's when I realized this wasn't my imagination. The next day, I went through the hospital's old record room, the one that smelled like mold and dust. I started flipping through decades-old patient files. After nearly an hour, I found one that froze me in place. Patient: Grace Miller. Department: Radiology. Date of death: March 18th, 2008. The report said, patient died during X-ray procedure. Suspected radiation surge. Technician error. But at the bottom, written by hand, were 3 words. Screamed, "It's burning." My heart dropped. It made sense now. The X-ray, the voice, the shadow inside the chest. Grace Miller never left that room. That night, I made a choice. I went back into the X-ray room, alone. No music, no lights except my flashlight. I stood in front of the machine and said quietly, "Grace, if you're still here, I know your name." The air shifted instantly. It felt heavier, colder. Then the monitor flickered and came to life. The X-ray image appeared again. A rib cage, faint, grainy. And something began pushing out from the inside of the image, slowly forming a shape, a hand, then a shoulder, then a woman. She stepped out of the shadows, eyes filled with pain. Her voice was soft, trembling. "Turn it off."
Please.
I reached for the switch. The lights cut out completely. The room went black. When they flickered back on, she was gone. But the floor was wet, as if someone had been standing there moments ago. The next morning, I told Ralph I was done. "I quit," I said. "I can't do this anymore." He didn't look surprised. He just nodded and said quietly,
You too, huh?
I frowned. "What do you mean?" He sighed.
You're the 4th night cleaner to quit in the last 5 years.
I didn't say anything. I just walked out, down the long hallway, past the flickering lights, past the peeling paint. I didn't even look back. But as I pushed the exit door open, I could have sworn I heard the faint sound of a woman whispering.
Thank you.
Sometimes when I drive past St. Mary's late at night, I still see a faint light glowing in the window of the old X-ray room. People say it's just an electrical glitch, but I know better. Some souls never leave their place of death, not until someone finally turns off the machine. You'd think working at Amazon overnight just means endless packing, caffeine, and silence. But when you're alone in a building the size of a football field, silence isn't comforting. It's alive. Some nights, it feels like the warehouse is watching you. And one night, I found out I wasn't wrong. My name's Ryan, and I used to work the night shift at an Amazon fulfillment center just outside Columbus, Ohio. The pay wasn't bad, and I didn't mind the quiet. Most nights, there were only a handful of us, a skeleton crew that kept the place running while the day shift slept. If you've never been inside one of those warehouses, imagine endless aisles of shelves stacked 20 feet high, humming machines that never stop, and the sound of conveyor belts echoing like whispers. It's easy to get lost in there, physically and mentally. My shift started at 10 p.m. and ended at 6:30 a.m. We usually had 5 people on duty, but one Thursday, 2 called in sick, and another left early after cutting his hand on a pallet strap. That left just me and a new guy named Jordan. Jordan was maybe 19, quiet, polite, and looked half asleep all the time. Around 1 a.m., he told me he was going to grab something from Zone F, one of the furthest sections of the warehouse. I nodded and went back to labeling packages. About 30 minutes later, I realized he hadn't come back. I radioed him. "Hey, Jordan, you good?" No response. I tried again. Nothing. At first, I figured maybe he'd gone to the restroom or was taking a smoke break outside. But when I checked the security screen near the front office, I saw something strange. Every zone camera was working except Zone F. Just static. I walked over anyway. It's a long walk, maybe 4 or 5 minutes through rows of shelves that all look the same. The further you go, the darker it gets, because the motion lights shut off automatically after a while. By the time I reached Zone E, the air felt colder. My footsteps echoed like someone was walking behind me. When I finally stepped into Zone F, the lights flickered on one by one, buzzing like flies. It looked empty at first. Just boxes, pallets, and that faint smell of cardboard and machine oil. Then, I saw something on the floor near the back. A yellow safety vest. Jordan's. I called out his name. No answer. But I heard something. a faint dragging sound like plastic scraping against the floor. It came from the far corner, past a row of unprocessed returns. "Jordan? You there?" Silence. Then a voice crackled through the overhead intercom. My own voice, only distorted.
"Ryan, come to Zone F."
I froze. The intercom system wasn't even near that area, and only the supervisors had access to it. The sound came again, lower, slower.
"Ryan, come to Zone F."
I backed away, heart pounding, trying to convince myself it was a glitch, or maybe someone messing around from the control room. But then the lights started going out one by one, from the back of the aisle toward me, like something was moving down the row. I ran. When I reached Zone D, I slammed into someone, a security guard named Mike. He grabbed my shoulders and said,
"What the hell are you doing back there? You're not supposed to be alone."
I tried explaining what I heard, but he just shook his head. "No one's on that channel tonight, and the intercom isn't even active during night shift." He walked me back toward the office. On the way, we passed a door that led to one of the old sections of the building, a locked storage area that hadn't been used since 2017. There was tape across it that read, "Do not enter. Safety hazard." Mike stopped suddenly. "You hear that?" We both did. A dull banging sound, rhythmic, like someone knocking from the other side of the door. He radioed the control booth. "You seeing anyone near Section F?" Static. Then the camera feed on the monitor inside the office flickered back to life. For the first time all night, Zone F was visible again, and standing in the middle of the aisle was Jordan, except he wasn't moving, just standing perfectly still, facing the camera. "Jordan!" Mike yelled through the radio. No response. I stared closer. The feed glitched every few seconds, but in one clear frame, I saw what made my stomach drop. Behind Jordan, near the floor, was a second figure crouched low, its hands resting on the ground like an animal. Then the camera went black again. Mike grabbed his flashlight and told me to stay in the office. He went to check it out. 10 minutes passed. No radio contact. 15. 20. I started pacing, trying not to lose it. Finally, I saw a figure walking toward the glass office door. I rushed forward, then froze. It wasn't Mike. Jordan stood outside the door, expression blank, eyes unfocused. His vest was back on, but it was inside out, covered in black stains that looked like oil, or something thicker. He just stood there, staring through the glass. I grabbed the phone to call 911. The second I picked it up, the lights went out across the warehouse, pitch black. All I could hear was the conveyor belt slowing to a stop and a faint echo of footsteps. Too many to be just one person. When the lights flickered back on a minute later, Jordan was gone. Mike's flashlight lay on the floor in Zone E. The cops came about 20 minutes later. They searched the entire building. They found Jordan's vest, his phone, and his ID, but not him. They also found something else. That storage area with the "Do Not Enter" tape. Someone had pried it open from the inside. There were footprints on the dusty floor, 3 sets, 2 boots, and 1 barefoot. Mike quit the next day. I tried to tough it out, but a week later, during another night shift, the intercom clicked on again. Static. Then my voice.
"Ryan, come to Zone F."
That was the last time I ever clocked in. They never found Jordan. But every few months, someone working nights swears they see a man in a yellow vest standing in Zone F, staring up at the security camera. And if you listen closely after midnight, you can still hear it.
"Come to Zone F."
I still remember that night as if it just happened. Maybe I'll never forget it, because that was the night I realized some people never really check out. My name is Mark. About 2 years ago, I worked the night shift at an old roadside motel called Motel 46. It was a small fading place off Highway 27, the kind of motel you only stop at when you're too tired to drive any further. The neon sign outside flickered between red and blue, buzzing like a dying fly. Inside, the wallpaper peeled from the corners, and the air always smelled faintly of dust and bleach. The owner, Mrs. Henderson, was an older woman who handled everything during the day. At night, it was just me. I liked the quiet. Most nights, nothing really happened. A truck driver checking in, maybe a lost traveler asking for directions. That's about it. But that one night, it wasn't quiet, and nothing felt normal again after that. It was around 2 in the morning. The snow outside had been falling for hours, blanketing everything in white. I was sitting at the front desk, sipping cold coffee and scrolling through my phone when I heard the front bell ring. I looked up. A man was standing outside the glass door. He didn't look like anyone I'd ever seen around here. Tall, wearing a long black coat that looked soaked from the snow, and his face, pale, expressionless, but with the faintest, strangest smile. I got up, unlocked the door and said, "Evening, sir. Need a room?" He didn't answer right away. He just looked past me at the rows of keys hanging on the wall. Then he said in a low, steady voice, "Is room 9 available?" I froze for a second. Room 9. That room had been closed for years. I tried to laugh it off. "Sir, that room's been closed for a long time. We had a fire there a few years back. It's not safe." He didn't seem to care. He tilted his head slightly and said, "I know. My things are still there." I blinked. "Your things?" He just nodded. I turned to glance at the key rack again, maybe just to avoid his stare, and my stomach dropped. The key to room 9 was gone. I cleared my throat and said, "I'm sorry, sir, but room 9 isn't in service anymore. The door's sealed. You can take any other room if you'd like." The man didn't move. He kept that same faint smile and said, "No. I always stay in room 9. Something about his tone sent a chill straight through me. It wasn't demanding or angry, just calm. Too calm, like someone repeating a fact they've known forever. It was supposed to be there. It had been hanging in the same spot for years, dusty and untouched. But now there was an empty hook. I looked back toward the man, but he was gone. The door hadn't opened. The bell hadn't rung. He was just gone. I stepped outside. The snow was still falling, thick and silent. There were no footprints on the ground. Nothing. Not even a mark. I went back inside, locked the door, and sat there, staring at the key rack like I was losing my mind. After a few minutes, I convinced myself I was just tired, that maybe I imagined it, but the hook for room 9 was still empty. I didn't sleep that morning. Every creak, every gust of wind outside made me flinch, and I swear, at one point, I heard slow, heavy footsteps walking down the hallway toward room 9. When I went to look, the corridor was empty. The next morning, when Mrs. Henderson arrived, I told her everything. I didn't even care how crazy it sounded. She listened quietly, her face pale, her eyes fixed on me. When I mentioned room 9, she put her hand over her mouth and whispered, "You saw him, didn't you?" I said, "What do you mean?" She looked down for a moment, then said softly, 10 years ago, there was a man who stayed here. His name was John Reynolds. He always booked room 9. One winter night, the gas heater malfunctioned. The room caught fire. He never made it out. I felt the blood drain from my face. "That's impossible," I said. "I saw him. He spoke to me." Mrs. Henderson nodded slowly. "Every few years," she said, "someone working the night shift says the same thing. They see a man in a black coat asking for room 9. I didn't want to believe her, but something inside me already knew she was telling the truth. I had to see for myself. So that evening, before my shift ended, I walked down the narrow corridor toward room 9. The lights above flickered as I got closer. The door was sealed shut with boards and chains. I could feel cold air leaking through the cracks, even though the hallway was warm. Through the small crack in the doorframe, I saw something inside. A faint glint of metal. I leaned closer. It was the key to room 9, lying on the floor, right inside the door. I don't know what made me do it, but I reached out and tried the handle. It didn't move. Then, just barely, it did. As if someone on the other side was holding it, pushing gently back. My heart was pounding so hard it hurt, and then I heard it. A whisper. right next to my ear. I've come back. I stumbled backward, ran down the hallway, and didn't stop until I reached the lobby. I grabbed my bag and left. I didn't even tell Mrs. Henderson I was quitting. I just drove away. That was the last night I ever worked there. But even now, years later, I can't shake the feeling that he followed me. Some nights when I wake up, I hear the faint ring of a bell. The same one from the front desk at Motel 46. And sometimes, just before I fall asleep, I see something in the mirror across the room, a reflection that isn't mine. A tall man in a black coat standing behind me, smiling faintly. I never look for too long. I just turn away, close my eyes, and whisper to myself, "It's just a dream." But deep down, I know it isn't. Because a few weeks ago, I got a letter in the mail. No return address. Just a single key taped inside an envelope. A brass key with a small tag attached to it. It read, Room 9, Motel 46.